all of those kids are blessed because you're captaining that ship. So keep up the good work.
I appreciate that very much. It's not an easy job, but it is one that fills the heart. So I
Absolutely.
like seeing those successes and working with our kiddos. And, they're going to be our neighbors soon. They're not kids forever. And
That's
so,
true.
we got to get them ready to join the world with us and teach them everything that we can in that short amount of time while we've got them.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brighter Together podcast. My name is Janet Courtney, and my special guest today is Jera Pieper. Jera is the Director of Special Education at Franklin Jefferson County Special Education District, and that is in Benton, Illinois. Jera, welcome to the show.
Hello, glad to be here.
So, Jera, tell us a little bit about your career and how you got to this position as Director of Special Education, and then tell us a little bit about Franklin Jefferson County Special Education District.
All right, can do. So I actually started out as a school psychologist. I have always been just very interested in how brains work. How do we learn? What is the best way to help people learn? And so I started as a school psych and really loved that. And as I got into that job, I felt like I couldn't support teachers enough with those serious behavior cases. So I could only go so far with that school psych training, and I needed to have some more support for that. So I actually went back to school to become a board certified behavior analyst, and then kind of dove into a mixed role between a school psych and a BCBA, really working with kids in special education who had behaviors for any sort of reason, kindergarten through 12th grade for those. And really, really loved that and enjoyed doing that. Lots of consulting with teachers, being in there in those classrooms and observing. And so that was, a super exciting role. As I continued my education, I started to move up within the company. And so then I became a supervisor. We were more in charge of IEP fidelity, looking at goals, making sure we're writing those IEPs really nice for those kiddos, that they're individualized, that they cover what each kid needs, and that we've each got our working pieces and parts in there. After doing that for a few years, then I began as the director of special ed. I've been in that role about 8 years now. So a much more administrative lead kind of on top of this pyramid of getting all of these services to our students. We work in Franklin and Jefferson County, so I'm way down in the south of Illinois, pretty rural area. And we serve 22 different school districts.
Wow.
So we have a pretty good group of different school districts. They vary in size. I've got some that are as small as, 100 kids. And then I've got some that have thousands. And so for me, it was very important to learn all the differences, the distinctions, and what makes each of those districts tick, and really get in there and kind of figure out what's that culture like and how do we support the special ed piece in that. Provide those therapies, SLPs, physical therapists, all of those things, and kind of more of a management administrative role. So that's where I'm working right now at Franklin Jefferson Special Ed.
Okay, so is this an Illinois thing? Like, do they outsource all of special education into a district in all of Illinois, or is that something specific to rural areas? I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah, so it definitely differs on where you're at. I think the more rural areas lean on their co-ops for most support. So while my districts hire their own special ed teachers and their own aides, we provide all those supplemental special ed therapy services. Most of the co-ops in the Southern Illinois region, because I work with a lot of them really closely, are set up in a similar fashion.
Okay.
So we'll bring in and set up therapies for speech therapy and physical therapy. A lot of us have our vision impaired teachers and hearing impaired teachers. So really any of those specialty areas, we find that we can have that group together in one co-op, and then we can serve 22 districts more smoothly. My district with 100 kids doesn't need a full-time SLP and a full-time physical therapist. So it really is kind of pooling together resources and pooling together funds so we can get each of those districts what they need.
Yeah. We've worked with one other district in similar in Illinois, exactly the same, in multiple schools, and we would help them out with this one over here this year because they had a maternity leave, and then we'd go over here and do this other thing another year, and it's great, and I love the fact that you guys have that system because there's nothing worse than a school district that has one student that has PT, and how do I serve that child, and how do I get that child the services? because that's something that we do as a company. It's like
Yeah.
just taking care of making sure. I always tell people when I talk to them, it's like, I don't care how much you have or how much you don't have. Help us to fill in the gaps. We'll help you fill. That's the point of us as a contract company. Let's fill in your gaps, whatever you can't get, and sometimes it's one, and sometimes it's, I just need an assessment done. Well, I've got an expert who can do that assessment. So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
really, really nice that the schools have that, because it really does make it so much easier. And the kids get the services they need.
Exactly. They get all the services they need, and we're never having to worry about, oh no, who are we going to plug in, or who can we provide for this kid, because they're already on staff. They're just building that back into their calendar for those kiddos. So that keeps, delays from setting up with some, outside providers or some things like that. We can kind of get right in there. But I will say, as the pool shrinks for some of these positions, we've worked with some companies to get people hired into these, because we're in a rural area, a little bit of a desert for some of these specializations. And so sometimes we've had to lean on some companies to provide remote services, or, 1 to 2 day a week, someone is traveling to our area. And so it's definitely a mix and a match scenario, depending on who we can get and provide those services to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. As and that's the whole point. It's like and that's Brighter Together. All of the things that we do in education make us brighter together, right? Because we really want to make sure that the kids get the services that they need. So what does a typical day look like for you, Jera? I know that's probably a terrible question, because you don't have a typical day, but okay, so give us a typical week. What does a typical week look like?
Sure. So a typical week's going to be, I'm typically going to have to figure out if we've got missing people, attendance. We've got to replace some subs. We've got to make sure those programs are running smoothly. So our co-op actually does run several special ed programs within those districts. So we basically rent a room. We fully staff that. And those are the kids, maybe those schools don't have the right staff to manage. So typically kind of those programs up and running, having a good day is how we start our week. And providing those. And then I'll typically be in the office, got lots of ISB reports, data, things like that to check on. And there are always throughout the day, some phone calls. Hey, we've had an IEP meeting and this question came up. I very much function as legal consult for a lot of my districts. And so I have heavy training in, law and IDEA and those types of things. And so I'm very much a consultant for all these districts. So when things come up, I'm usually the first call of, hey, how do we handle this scenario? Or we've got a scenario that presents like this. What kind of ideas do you have? And so very much kind of troubleshooting, problem solving throughout the week for specifics. I also, and you mentioned kind of collaboration. I collaborate with a lot of our local co-ops and even with the Superintendent's Association. So I'm usually hosting some meetings for that, or joining in a committee meeting for our legal panel that works through the state. And so I keep myself busy kind of jumping on some of those things. We provide a lot of professional development. So making sure all the pieces of that are set up and ready for our staff to come in, or for the district staff to come in. And other than that, I'm kind of kicking through whatever those daily tasks are. So writing IDEA grants and managing those functions, or, getting our policies up to date, or making sure that really a lot of times I feel like we're working through something and then going back through and ironing out some things. So, for example, when the restraint and timeout laws came out, we had to go through and rewrite some policies. We had to make sure some language was taken it out. We had to really look at what we were doing and make sure that we were following what their procedures were, but also best practice for what was working with our kiddos. I felt like we were in great standing for what we were doing, but our policies were old. And so updating those things, making sure they match what we're doing, and always making sure, honestly, we're going over and over some of our procedures to make sure that they're smooth, so that we're smooth operating on the business level. And it's all about service for the kids. We don't want bumps in the road to have any effect on our kiddos. And so just getting our grant funding, getting our budget in order, getting the right people hired in positions, those types of things are really important throughout the week, and just kind of managing and keeping those things up. I would say I typically tell people I feel like I should go to work in like a fireman's outfit, because I'm putting out a lot of fires.
All day, every day.
Always all
Yeah.
day, every day. There's going to
Yep.
be some calls that I didn't expect. And we go, oh my gosh, a scenario's come up. What do you recommend? And so I like being that problem solver. I kind of like thinking on my feet and trying to come up with ideas that work for everybody, because it's not always a school district calling me. Sometimes it's a parent calling me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a community member calling me. And so thinking about some of these problems, making sure we don't have system-wide problems that need fixed. And if they do, we'll fix those. But really looking at those daily procedures to make sure we have some smooth communication and that systems are running well so that everybody can just come to work and focus on their job.
Right.
Working with those kiddos.
Right. Yeah. Because ultimately, that's why we do what we do, right? Is so those kids get the education that they need, 100%.
And as much pressure as I can relieve from our teachers and our staff, the better they're going to do, because they have more time to focus on the kids and they have more time planning their own activities and their own things. And so, we try to take any type of management off their plates and try to assist with those types of things so they can just focus on the kids.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I know we talked before the show a little bit, but what is your management style? You've got people in 22 different places. You've got people, I'm sure there are local people there. How do you manage all of that without pulling your hair out? Because your hair is long. It's beautiful, by the way.
It can get interesting because we have a physical office located in Benton, but we have 2 counties that we're working in. And so some of those pieces are really planning and preparing very well, assigning people the right calendar, and doing some of those pieces. My management style is very personal. For example, I know Mrs. Smith coaches basketball after school, and she needs to end her day close to this point. So that's going to be the calendar she's assigned. I try to work really with people so their preferences are honored. When you think of like a school psychology team, I may have someone who's really good with behavior. I may have someone who just loves working with the little kids and wants to be in pre-K. And I may have someone who's best with the high school students. I'm going to plug them in where their strengths are too.
Right.
And so I think you really have to look at what are people's strengths, what do they like doing, because they're going to need to like what they're doing, and getting those pieces to all work together, and so I very much think that it's personal preference. It's getting to know your staff, but a lot of what we do is very much appreciating the staff. If I know you've done something good, if I know that you've really worked hard for a kid, or I've heard about a good experience of a child, maybe you haven't, I'm going to come tell you. I feel like I'm everybody's biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
What I really want to do is be on the sidelines cheering them on so they can do their best, because we know public education, sometimes we take a beat down. Sometimes it is not always, fun and happy times. Our motto is very much, we are going to be here, but we might as well have fun doing it. So I think I have a lighthearted approach. And if something comes up that needs handled, people are not afraid to come to me, because there's not any issues where I've ever come unglued or really been hard on people. And I've been told a lot, we just sometimes need to come talk to you because you're calming us down. We're thinking we have, these emergencies, and you're coming in going, it's okay. We can manage this. We can figure it out. Let's problem solve. And so I think that approach really makes it easier for people to come to me with problems. And if they're coming to me with them, we can solve them before they're too big. I have a lot of people that really say, your door is always open. Always open. Sometimes there's a line outside my door because there's enough people that need to talk to me. But I want them to know I am always available. Text, call, email, stop by. What do we need to chat about? And as a leader, sometimes you have to recognize, sometimes people just need to vent some things out. And you really actually don't need to solve a problem. Letting them vent. And sometimes I'll come up with a solution and they go, okay, I think I'm going to try that. Perfect. Glad I could listen. Glad I could be supportive. But I do think I have, that management style that's friendly and approachable, but they know I'm serious about what we're doing for kiddos and that I work really hard for that. And so, they're not afraid to come to me. I also think as part of my leadership, I don't think anybody can be trained enough ever, because I'm a nerd and I love it. I want to go to every professional development I can find. I want to hone in on something. If I hear about something new, let me dive in. And so we have a very heavy professional development calendar. Our staff gets to kind of dictate that through some needs assessments. But I don't want to waste people's time. Nobody's got time to be out of the classroom. So if you're going to come sit with me for a professional development day or some type of training, I want it to be practical, usable. And when you walk out, you go, okay, I know what pieces of this I'm going to use.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to do a bunch of kind of lofty training where they leave and they go, well, that sounded really great, but like, what do I do?
Yeah.
I need practical tools in their hands. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've worked really, really hard to get good professional development training and adjust that schedule as needs arise throughout the year. So for me, being very open, but making sure I'm training them so that they have the skills that they're going to need in those positions.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say is the toughest part of your job?
I think the toughest part of my job is sometimes managing when parties disagree.
Mm.
When we're working with IEPs, sometimes different staff disagree on how to manage a child. Sometimes a school psych may suggest something, or someone may suggest something that someone else says, I'm not doing that. How do we work through some of these problems? And for me, it's typically bringing back to focus the child and making sure we're trying to make these things easy. We're not going to come in and tell a teacher, hey, you have all these 5,000 things to do, and we want you to do this full behavior plan, and you have to do something every 3 minutes. They're like, can't do that.
Right.
So for me, it's making sure when we're consulting and we're working that the solution we come up to is livable for everybody. Student can handle this. Teacher can make sure they implement it, or an aide who can implement it. Parents are comfortable with what behavior we're focusing on and how we're managing that piece. And everybody's got to be on board. Working through some of those things can be difficult. And I think we just have to work together, stay nice and level-headed, and figure out what are those points where we're kind of butting up against each other, and how do we work through those things. So for me, that's difficult because, you want to do, hey, this is what the best thing is, but we've got to work with everybody. And then I would mention on top of that, being from a small town area, a very rural area, if someone gets mad at you from a work thing, either you're going to get nasty looks at the basketball game, and at the park, and at the grocery store. And so it's very important for me that even if we don't all agree, we can all live in this community together.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. And I think they're very respectful of that, because no one wants to go to their normal places and feel awkward either. And so even when we have those things, I'm not one that shies away from, hey, I know you're not thrilled with me now, but like, let's look long term, and let's make sure this is a doable thing for us. And sometimes in those small town, situations, grocery shopping can be kind of interesting.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that, what would you say is your favorite part of your job, or what are some of your biggest wins? Either one.
I think right off the top, favorites is an easy one. It's the kid's success.
Yeah.
We just had a story last week where a student came in from one of our behavior schools that's a pretty locked down scenario. They've been removed from their home school. And some of those kids have some pretty high intensity, dangerous behaviors. One of the children who had graduated from there had come back in. He wanted to talk to his fellow students that he had gone to school with. He is currently at a 4-year university. He is currently working already at the Department of Corrections. He had bought himself a car, and he was paying rent on a home. He's only been out 2 years.
Wow.
That is the biggest success from a kiddo who a school said, you can't even go here. You're so dangerous. To, hey guys, because of the support you provided us. And he said that because of you guys,
right.
I'm able to do this. And the story was for the rest of the students, like, you need to understand they are here for you. They do love you. And what they're telling you will make a difference. And you're like, I'm getting chills talking about it.
Yeah, of course.
That's what I want to hear.
Right.
Every time we get a success story, everybody's like, all the hard work, all the effort, all the bad days are worth it when you know a kid reached success and they say, hey, I could have done it without you. And I appreciate you guys. So for me, that's the easy one. And you don't get as many of those, I think, as people would hope. So if you've got a teacher out there or anyone in the education system who really had an impact on your life, reach out to them. I'm telling you, even 30 years later, it will make their day. It will make them well up with pride, and it will let them know what you did for your life's work did have an impact. So reach out to those people. They love it.
Yeah. And we don't know because we don't, we're not in your head. We're not in your head. We work really hard to take care of you and want you to be successful and want to love into you and feed into what you need, your needs are. But we don't always see it. And it can, at times it can be hard because it's like, sometimes it's a little bit of a grind, but it is worth it. And so hearing that and knowing that, and I was telling someone in the last podcast, that aha moment when you see that and they get it, it's just such a beautiful thing. It really is.
It is. It is so wonderful to see them and then growing into themselves. And so, just to know we had a little piece in that, we were able to, let that little birdie fly and look at them. They're soaring. They're doing great. And so I love that.
Takes a village. Takes a village. It does. It really does. And, some people think that's so cliche, but it's really the truth. I mean, it's like parents are the first teachers, but they need the support of the schools, and the schools have so many different people and so many specialized people that can help with whatever it is that you're dealing with. And that's what they're there for. And that's what we're there for. Right. So it's just so, and we get the privilege of doing that. And, and it's a blessing. I feel, to be a servant leader and to be able to do the things that we do in education. That's the reason that we do what we do. It certainly isn't for the pay.
Exactly. We're in it for the heart. So if you love and appreciate us, come tell us. We need our hearts to feel good. That's what we like. That's what pays us.
Yes, absolutely. We need that. Yes. We absolutely need that.
Well, and you had asked about some wins as well. So that particular program is really one of my favorites because, again, it's an off-campus location. So it's really our most restricted program. And students have engaged in some behavior that was pretty inappropriate for their school. So they've been moved to this off-campus program. And when I took over as the director, I already had been a Psych and a BCBA at that location for some time, kind of on and off. And I really thought there were some things I wanted to push and to change to make that a much more helpful program for our students. So I found and wrote some grants to get 3 full kitchenette sets so we can basically have like a culinary class. So we've got ovens, stoves, microwaves, all of those types of things. We got washer and dryers. We've got refrigerators and freezers. And so now we have, we actually got enough stuff to set up a mock apartment as well. So we're doing a whole lot of life skills. We're going to show you how to wash and dry and fold laundry. We're going to go through lots of basics of cooking. And in fact, just 2 weeks ago, the culinary program there invited us for their first dinner. So they had prepared a meal for us. They were so proud. It was the greatest thing ever. But for me, I've now got 6 kids who know how to feed themselves if they need to, who can feed a family when they get bigger. And so these are life skills we need that in these alternative programs, the kids just weren't getting.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a really big win to get some of those really heavy duty, expensive equipment in there so that we can work on what's life after high school. What are you going to do? We have a very strong transition to work program, but we needed those home skills.
Yeah.
And so, I actually had a student, the reason I really went down that path was I had a student, one of my faves, bright kiddo, pretty rough home life. And he stopped coming to school because students were making fun of him because his clothes smelled. He was wearing them day after day after day.
Oh.
They didn't always have water. They didn't always have laundry detergent. He couldn't get new or different clothes. And so through some other grants, we've kind of stocked a store for those things because I don't want any kid to not come to school for basic needs not being met. But after that, I was like, okay, we've got to make sure these kids can really take care of themselves in some of the situations they need to. And a lot of kids in that program were partnered with DCFS that has a residential home. So a lot of them, I think we've got about 9 girls coming from a residential home. They're not working on those skills there either. And so once you age out of a system, I want you to know how to manage a household, how to look at budgets, how to feed yourself. And that's not a school program. That's on top of the academics and all the other things that we do. Yeah. But it's so important for their life skills. And I think those things are things they really do carry throughout their life. So for me, that was a win to be able to really pump up and add coursework and classes in some areas that I think will help them throughout life.
Yeah. 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 It's so crazy that to think that kids don't know how to do some of that basic stuff. But they don't. If you're not intentional with putting your child on the counter and watching you cook and having them help and learning that learning that the stove is hot, you got to be careful,
Right.
and that
Right.
you can't put the blue jeans in with the white t-shirt. It's not going to come out white.
Right.
It's important. All
And
of
they
those
were a
things.
little
Yeah.
upset the first day we started the cooking class because there was math involved. And we're like, we're about to trick
Ah,
you into using math on a daily basis, but this is the math you're going to need to use every
yeah.
day. So,
Yeah.
so they're really enjoying seeing how those pieces kind of fit together. And hey, you remember we talked about measurements in math. Now we're using them, and let's see if
Right.
we can get those measured out correct. So that's
Yeah.
been very.
Yeah. And then just, how do I balance my checkbook? How do I pay my
Mhm.
bills? It's so different than I remember having a register. Now it's all digital and does the
Right.
math
And I
for
think
you.
it's
And
it's less that they see. So we actually that whole program runs on a point system for behavior. They exchange those points they earn for their good behavior for a store. They also get to choose what's in the store. They'll give us lists of things, so
oh,
things that are reinforcing that they'll work for. But in the oldest high school group, we actually have that whole system set up like a bank account. And so they
ah,
have to write checks to use their points. They have to have a balance and a register. And so we're teaching some of those banking skills, but in a way that really they understand.
right.
And they really want to get it right because they want those prizes. They want those rewards. And they like
Hmm.
looking at, hey, I've banked up so many points. Now I know I can spend this many. So we keep embedding things. I say, we're so tricky at teaching you guys
But it's
because we keep
so
embedding
good.
these
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
into those life skills or those daily things because that's where you really use it.
Hmm.
So it's been a super fun program for us
And
there.
not everything is, we live in such an instantaneous society, everything is right now, right now. But when you want a particular set of headphones and they're $150, you have to save to get those headphones. And so you're
Right.
teaching them a skill, not only for that thing that they want while they're there, but to understand that I don't have $150 in my bank account, but I know that if I save, I can get there. That's a skill that's so incredibly important and so good for the kids to. That's probably why that one child is doing so well. You've taught him all of those things.
Well, and it's funny that you say that because when they come in and they're younger, that's the problem. They don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I have to engage in decent behavior throughout the day and then I get my rewards. We set it up and we talk that talk very much when they're younger. So,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you've only owned 25 points today. You can buy something for 25 points or you can save for the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of those first year newbie kids is spending their points.
20, yeah,
I
right
guarantee it.
away.
I
Right
want
away. Yeah.
and before long, they see the kids with the bigger prizes or the bigger things, and it's not always prizes. We do a whole lot of social things with that as
Oh,
well.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they want that, and so they
Right.
start to learn. If I add a couple of these days together, I can get something bigger. And by the time they're in high school, that checkbook system is really just the way they're tracking their own points because they know how that system works.
Yeah.
So it is great for that instant gratification versus no, you have to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a really bad behavior blow up, a consequence, you're going to have to get some taken away. And that's
Right.
the consequence of the behavior. So,
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So, Jera, where do people go if they want to learn? Because you've shared so many things. I love it. Where do people go if they want to learn a little bit more about the things that you're doing or finding Franklin, Jefferson County?
sure. So, we do have a website, and it is just fjsped.org. On that website, I always have my professional development calendar. So you can kind of look through and see what types of trainings we're working on, what we're focusing on. And on that website, we also have a listing and descriptions of some of those programs. So like I've talked about one of them quite a bit. We have 4 of those different types of programs that we run. So kind of just some descriptions on there. One of them is leaning more towards communication disorders and autism. And so it kind of describes how that looks vastly different in the program. We've got lots of information on RTI, your tiered interventions, and those things, and we link out to some external websites. So we've really tried to provide as much as we can on our website and some really good links to some other pieces. Hey, you want some resources on looking at behavior charts because you don't know what kind of chart you want, we'll link all of those things. So what we're trying to do is no excuses on lack of material or support or help. What do you need? We can get you there. We can get it for you. We can come train you. Just let us know what you need and we can provide that. So I feel like that's helpful.
Good. Very good. Very, very good. I love it. It's like we speak the same language, you and I. So fun. So absolutely fun. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, Jera. I appreciate it. And I love your heart. And I know that those 22 schools and all of those kids are blessed because you're captaining that ship. So keep up the good work.
I appreciate that very much. It's not an easy job, but it is one that fills the heart. So I like seeing those successes and working with our kiddos. And, they're going to be our neighbors soon. They're not kids forever. And
That's
true. We got to get them ready to join the world with us and teach them everything that we can in that short amount of time while we've got them. Like I said, then they're fly little birdie and we hope you do well.
Yeah.
But it's good. And, I would definitely say I love working in education because there are so many people like you as well that we're here for this. We love it. And we're going to do whatever we can to make it the best for kiddos. And I just hope that people outside of the education world realize how much we care, how much we love their kiddos as well, and how much we want everybody to be successful. So.
Oh, very well said. Very well said. Thank you. Thank you so much.